Welcome to part 2 of I'm in an algebra class. I was told to get this TI-84 calculator and I don't know how to use it yet. We're going to be doing some graphing. As I press keys, then they will show up as red on my interface. So follow along as I hit the y equals button, x, and graph. It should look like that. Several things could have gone wrong right there. For example, if your window was something really weird, say someone was using this calculator to do some sort of application problem that required you to change your window. If that's the case, when you try to look at your graph, it's not going to be the right proportions. It's not going to look right to you. So if it shows up that it is the right graph, it just doesn't look right, then we're going to go to zoom and 6. That will restore it to the right proportions, what we're looking for. So I technically don't think it's exactly the right proportions, but more on that later. Another thing could be that maybe when you tried to graph, it gave you an error message like this and said invalid dimensions. If that is the case, you can go to y equals. Well, first of all, you can quit. You go to y equals, and then you hover over whatever plot is on, hit enter, and then look at the graph. Something else that often happens that goes wrong is somewhere down here, so way down, let's say down there and you can't even see it. There are things in there that it doesn't make sense. It looks like either a toddler got a hold of it or, something like that. You sat on it, that could happen. So when we go to y equals, you don't see that there's anything wrong. But when you try to graph, it gets real confused, error syntax, So then if there's a go-to option, you choose go-to. And it shows you, if there's a go-to, it'll blink on this stuff is wrong. And you could say, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Did I sit on it? And then when you go to graph, it should be the right thing. So if you have just fixed one of those issues, go back and do that y equals x graph. So those buttons y, and then it says x, t, theta, n. I'm going to be referring to that as the x as opposed to the variable key because we are in an algebra class and x is going to be the variable that we're using there. I've had people refer to that as the x ton key, as in we have an x ton number of things to learn here. And then graph. Now let's try some stuff. Y equals, I can clear out the old. Let's type in these two lines. So 2x plus 3, negative, don't hit minus, 1 over 4x plus 5, and graph. Quick little troubleshooting. If you go to graph and it says error syntax, choose go to. If it blinks on what we believe to be a negative sign, it was probably actually a minus. And see how much longer it is than the negative sign? Let's change that to a negative. And now graph. So that kind of syntax error can be when that binary operator minus went in front of something instead of between things, and it doesn't know what to do with that. Now, one of the fun keys that we can press is trace up here, and it will lock onto some sort of coordinate. You can see up here in the top left corner of the graph, it'll tell you what equation it's locked on. The great thing is that I can type in some number like -2, hit enter, and it will blink and show me where that is and tell me the y value that goes along with it. I can find my coordinates that way. If I type in the number 7, it is off screen, but it will still tell me what the y value is at that point. If I want the red one instead, if I want the other function, then I hit up and down to get back and forth. And so it locked onto some place. Not quite 7, 6.9, blah, 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 blah. So I can say 4 if I want to. I can pick whatever I want to, and then it will tell me where it is. And it turns it red if you have a color screen, and that way you can see that I'm on the red one now. Furthermore, if I want an XY chart, go to second and graph. Now my default settings are here where X is chosen for me and they choose integers. So it counts all my X's. Now you see right here I have X sub 1, Y sub 1 and Y sub 2, and these are the equations that we already have typed into here. So second graph gets me back to table. So when X is 0, then 2 times 0 is 0 plus 3 is 3. And then over here, then -1/4 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. So it's evaluating them. Because I used a fraction key, these are showing up as fractions. If I want a little bit more control over that, I hit second and window. That'll take me to table set. I'm going to go over here to ask because I want more control over what values I pick. So when I go to second and table, it's empty for me, but I get to pick whatever I want. I can still pick 0, 4, and -4 because those are things that are going to come out nicely right here. It makes this lovely XY chart for me. And in fact, it makes multiple XY charts for me at the same time. But I can also choose whatever I want. Make sure we're using negative for negative 2.3, not minus. Or, the square root of 7. Sure. Whatever you want. And it will evaluate them on the spot. It will make multiple XY charts for you. If you want to control the part of the graph that you see, let's say that we want to look at only quadrant 1 because that's where the intersection is. I can go to Window and change my values from 0 to 10. Or in fact, let's make them 0 to 7 in both of these cases. And then when I go back to graph, it'll show me just that part. Now I mess with my window and everything looks all weird. And I've told you before that if we want to go back to normal, we just hit zoom and 6. That's the default setting for it. But I mentioned earlier that it's not quite right. There's an aspect ratio issue. You see how my x's are wider than the y's are tall? So it's squished incorrectly, and that kind of bothers my eyeballs. This is not a requirement, but if you hit zoom and 5, it'll fix that problem. And so you'll see things that are in the right proportion now. Let's graph some things that aren't lines. So let's see, how about a parabola? So if I have x minus 5, close that, squared. No, in fact, I could do that better. I already showed you where the squared button was. Let me actually use that one. So x minus 5 squared, and we'll say plus 3. And then if I want to square root, second, and then that square button, x minus 2, maybe get out of there, minus 7. And let's say that I want an absolute value. So that's going to be in math. Go 1 to the right for NUM. ABS is what you're looking for, but when you hit that button, it shows up like an absolute value. So let's say that is x plus 4 and plus 1. And one last one, because let's throw something else in there. They put it down here and make it green. How about if we have x plus 5 cubed minus 2. When I take a look at that graph, it'll show me all of those things, and we can use as color coding if you have a color screen. The blue one is your parabola, the red one is your square root, the black one is your absolute value, and your green one is cubic. Have all of them come up here. And then you need to graph these. I would use second table and pick some very specific things. So I might pick things, let's say if I wanted to look specifically at the green one, that cubic one. It's a skill from your class that -5 is going to be the middle value, that pivot point, that really important part for you. But often what happens is second table. Let me delete all of these. That's how you delete those. So if -5 is really important, then people pick -6 and -4, the things that are around that. And I'm mainly focusing right here on this green stuff right here. And if I just plot those 3 points, then people tend to draw a straight line instead of that nice little curvy thing that we have in that cubic function. So what we're going to do is negative 4.5, and we're going to look at negative 5.5. And people don't usually want to mess with all these decimals, but really, who cares? We're letting a machine do the add, subtract, multiply, divide. This machine is not really so much doing algebra for us, it is doing boring arithmetic, and we love to assign that to machines. Let's look at something beyond those two. So negative 7 and negative 3. And with the XY chart of this and this together, that would be enough information to accurately graph this on paper. We could do that with any of these things. It is my opinion that graphing inequalities using a TI-84 calculator is a wildly unnecessary skill, but people have asked for it before, so I'm going to show you how to do it. I like to do it for demonstrating things, but you know, it's not, if you can do it on paper, that's kind of the important skill, and this is just really superfluous. So I picked these two lines. So that's what they look like. Pause if you want to follow along. Here's the graph. Now, what I want to do is show that these are, I'm going to go back to here, I want something that's greater than the blue one and less than the red one. So I'm going to hover over this part far to the left, and when I go down to here, then I'm going to scroll left and right. So greater than this one. Then I hit OK. And then I'm going to go down here, hit enter and get into that menu. Less than that one. OK. And when we're talking about greater than, and then it's the triangle that's on the top, and when I'm talking about less than, it's the triangle that's on the bottom. Those are the symbols we use. If you have a black and white TI-84, go to the left of the Y sub 1, Y sub 2, go to the left of that and hit enter on the side of it where it shows you a line. It'll change it to dotted. It could change it to above and below. You know, a lot of things in there. But it's to the left of your Y, whatever. Then when we graph it, it looks like this. Now, this is a useful teacher tool to say, you see the intersection and over here, and I can say the purple part because it's both red and blue. But, I mean, it's not necessarily a skill that I think that you need to remember real hard how to do when you're taking a test. See you for part 3.